And blessed to be a part of your day. Our great friend Lars Larson joining us now. Freshly back from CPAC. Lars, good to have you with us.
Hey, good morning to you, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. It was funny. I was just thinking of you as I was walking by, and this is going to lead up to a question, so just forgive me for 2 seconds.
Sure.
Many years ago, you and I were on a national show together, Campbell Brown Show. It was two of those folks were big stars. It was you, it was Roland from Chicago, and it was Campbell Brown, and it was myself. And I thought, listening to what you had to say, and it was about Reverend Wright and just how far we've come from Reverend Wright to the debate on guns. And this is where it leads up to the big question. Lars, you're on national TV quite a bit. We're seeing a lot and hearing a lot of debate, whether it's Fox News, which you appear on quite a bit, or some of these other shows. What's it like being on these shows as a guest? Are they really trying to get anywhere?
I think they are. I mean, I'll give them their due. Just so people know, this is the Inside Baseball. When a show books me, and by the way, I've never received a dime to appear on any of those shows. They do usually have to pay the liberals, like Leslie Marshall, to appear, because for some reason conservatives are willing to do the right thing without getting paid for it, whereas liberals want to get paid for it. It's kind of strange given that they always accuse us of being the capitalists. But they will send me a note and say, we'd like to book you on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. And I say, okay. Now, that doesn't mean I fly to D.C. or to Atlanta to be on the Chicken Little News Network as we were. And they'll say, we want to talk about X. Give us your talking points. Now, all they're saying is, where are you coming from on this issue? Because you don't want to put two people on who agree on an issue. And typically, if they're booking a liberal and a conservative, the conservative is going to have one approach to things, like the shooting almost 2 weeks ago now in Florida, and a liberal will have a different approach to that. And I will sit down and say, bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what I'm going to say. I've never, as apparently now has become the custom at CNN, to tell people what questions to ask or what things to say. And if they ever had the temerity to say, we want you to come on and say this, I'd ask them, I'd just tell them I'm not coming on to be a marionette or a puppet. I'm coming on to voice my opinion. If you want my opinion, you're welcome to it. If you want me to voice something else, or if you want me to ask a certain question, I'm not doing that, as we've seen that CNN tried to do with at least one young man on that big national town hall in Florida, and perhaps some others as well. And yet that seems to be the way the mainstream media is going, especially with contentious topics, because you see, they want to control the output of what people see. And then, of course, what people see and hear on the national cable networks to a large extent guides public opinion. I mean, the average person isn't reading the Washington Post or the New York Times, but they may be watching CNN or MSNBC or CNBC, and when they see things on there, they take some of their direction as, well, oh, now I understand the issue. Well, you really don't if the networks themselves are trying to guide the conversation in that way. So just so people know, I don't ever allow the folks who invite me on to tell me what to say. I will tell them what I'm going to say, and if they withdraw the invitation, that's fine. It's no skin off my back. It's more time to focus on my radio show. But does that answer your question?
It does. I just kind of, again, because you'll have the booker talk to you and you'll do these things, and I know you do quite a bit. We need to have a petition to get you on this week since Roland Martin is on this week. It would be great to have.
Oh, I'd love to get on.
Somebody from the heartland. You know what I mean?
Well, and here's the thing. Most of the people you see, a few exceptions, but most of the people you see even advocating that teachers carry concealed, I carry concealed every single day. Now, obviously, I didn't back in Maryland because Maryland has some really terrible laws that violate the Second Amendment rights of its citizens. And, of course, you don't carry a gun on a plane. But if I had been traveling to a good concealed carry state like Idaho, I could have checked my pistol, properly declared it with TSA, and then picked it up when I landed in Boise or wherever I happen to land, and I could have carried it legally because my permits cover Idaho as well. And so, I get frustrated with these people because they're always putting people on to voice opinions about which they don't seem to know a whole lot. At least I am starting to see that I always wait. I was waiting for the major media to get backed into a corner where they had to ask the hard questions on a different side than they usually take. And over the weekend, I hope everybody has seen the interview between Jake Tapper, who unfortunately, he used to be a good, solid, down-the-middle reporter who'd ask hard questions of Obama and ask hard questions of President Trump. Now he seems to be one who's guided by the environment he's in, a very liberal news organization called CNN. But over the weekend, he really bore down on Scott Israel, the sheriff of Broward County, who it seems, I think the guy should be fired, frankly. This guy literally, Sheriff Israel, that is, over the weekend said, look, I provide the training, I put the gun in their hand, but if I station them at a school and then they don't go inside, that's not on me. And I immediately, I try not to say crazy things on Twitter, but I have a Twitter account, @LarsLarson_Show, and I said, this guy needs to be fired. He apparently forgets that he ran for a job, and that's what you do. You run and you ask the voters, make me sheriff of your county. He ran for a job that comes with a desk, and that desk is a place where the buck stops. He's not Harry Truman, but the buck stops on the sheriff's desk when it's a sheriff issue like this. And he's trying to say, hey, it's not my problem. Well, it is your problem, and that maybe is the biggest problem. The second problem that you should be aware of, too, and Kevin, I'm sure you are, schools all over America, including, I suspect, in Boise, have been cutting deals with local law enforcement, saying oftentimes students will do things that are crimes. But here inside the bubble of the public school, we want to be able to deal with those internally. Well, I'm sure the Weinstein Company was dealing with its problems internally, even though the head of the company, Harvey Weinstein, was committing crimes against women. The problem with doing this in a public school is when a student assaults another student, he needs to be charged with assault and go through the process. Nicholas Cruz never was. Now, the school was scared to death of him. They literally had put out an order saying, if you see this guy with a backpack on campus, immediately alert the office. Because they had, for years, apparently ignored what Nicholas Cruz is doing. And the Broward County Sheriff's Office had gone to his house as many as 39 times. There's one news organization that says it's 40. And they had never once written him up for committing a crime. Now, I got to tell you, Kevin, I'm sure that the sheriff's office in your area has gone to people's homes because of a noise complaint. And they walk away and they don't write it up as a criminal act, or they may not even write a ticket if the people say, we'll quiet it down. But if you come to a house and someone has been assaulted, the other person gets to go to jail. If they had done that to Nick Cruz one time, if he had been accused of domestic violence one time. Now, what we don't know is what were those 39 calls about at this point? And I'd like to know, were they all, and some of them were pretty damning. If you've read some of the logs that came out that have been released, it appears that he was acting in a crazy and dangerous manner. Kevin, if I visited you in Boise and I said, hey, Kevin, you and I got into an argument, and I got angry enough, I said, I'm going to lay you out right now. You know I wouldn't do this, Kevin, but if I said, Kevin, I'm going to lay you out on the floor right now, I'm going to punch you till your teeth fall out. And if you believe that was that I wasn't just joking, and you know what I'm talking about, there are friends who joke about that, but if you thought I was angry enough that I was going to hurt you, and I merely said those words, I'm going to hurt you right now, I've committed the crime of intimidation, okay? And that is a crime because our society has seen that you have to have a way to address somebody who threatens, and the threat is credible, but never actually throws the punch, because it still is a crime to make somebody fear for their life or safety. They never charged him. If they had charged him, here's what would have happened. Well, they charged him at home or at school. He would have appeared before a judge, and a judge might well have said, listen, I'll accept a guilty plea from you, or you can go on trial for this charge, but if you take the guilty plea, I'm going to put you on probation. I'm going to leave this on your record, and maybe if you get your act squared away, in a couple of years after probation, we will take this, we'll erase this from your record. But there will still be a record. You were arrested and charged and took a plea and all that. If they had done that one time, Nick Cruz would not have been able to buy those guns. So when all these people say it's the NRA's fault, it's not the NRA's fault. It's the gun maker's fault. It's not the gun maker's fault. We have schools that are participating in making a dangerous place for kids. They've declared themselves gun-free. That's a dangerous place. 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. They've decided that they're going to be the judge, jury, executioner, and police for every crime that happens inside the bubble of the public schools. And, Kevin, just a suggestion, I'd love to see you get your superintendent on and say, when a crime happens inside your schools, the ones that you run as superintendent, do you call the police? And do you see that people are charged with a crime? And if you don't do it, why? And I know that educators are going to say, well, we don't want to see a kid have his record tarnished with, a charge. Gee, that worked out so well for Nick Cruz and the 17 people he murdered, right?
Right. Our great friend.
Sorry, I'm running off at the mouth. But
Lars, we love hearing you. This is why we have you on, to hear what you have to say. Our great friend Lars Larson joining us here on KIDO Talk Radio. Catch him tonight at 6. So, Lars, CPAC, what did you get out of it? And by the way, you just don't go there and hang out. You're working nonstop. And, again, that's impressive. I kind of judge myself as a workaholic, but you take it to a new level. So
you need to come next year, Kevin. We would love to see you there.
Well, thank you.
And can I tell you the most exciting interview I got?
Okay.
Staff Sergeant Travis Mills,
wow.
who I'm sure nobody in your audience knows. But, I talked to commissioner from the FCC. I talked to some big politicians. We were on schedule to have the FCC chairman on. We didn't get the president and vice president. They're very busy right now. But we talked to a lot of smart people. But Travis Mills, quadruple amputee. His right arm is off right at the shoulder. His left arm, he's got about half of it. The rest is prosthetic. He's got 2 legs, prosthetic legs, bionic legs these days, that start about mid-thigh. I have in my life met maybe 1 or 2 people who have as positive an attitude about their life as this man does. He's got a family. He's got a wife. He's got a baby on the way and one child already here. He's positive. He runs a veterans organization now. Now, he could have come out of the military missing 4 limbs. The military provides 100% disability, and they'll provide you enough to live on. That wasn't enough for him. This guy is out and about, and he's joking with my producer after the interview, although he threw a number of jokes during the interview. You know how I shake hands, but the kids like to fist bump, right? And when you fist bump, sometimes you blow it up. You fist bump and then you open your hand, and that's blowing it up. And he says, hey, to my producer, hey, fist bump me, but don't blow it up. Last time I tried that, it didn't work out so well, and he waves his prosthetic arm. This guy, we should all take lessons when we wake up every morning and draw a breath and get that first cup of coffee and walk down the hall on our own legs and pick up my grandchild with my own arms. We should all wake up and thank God that there are people like this who will go off, put on a uniform, pick up a gun, defend their country. When they step on a bomb and they lose all 4 limbs, they come out of it. I'm sure he's probably had his dark moments, but he is one of the most positive individuals I've ever met, and not in a Pollyannish way. He's out to try and change things for other vets for whom the psychological wounds go so deep that they are ready to end their lives, which happens all too often with vets and especially wounded vets. This man was he stood out among all the people I got to talk to, Kevin. He was amazing.
I'm just blown away by the positivity, and it really causes all of us to look within inside ourselves.
Well, I've put that interview up at LarsLarson.com if you want to listen to it. And then just imagine, this is a young man who's missing all 4 of his limbs, and one of them right at the shoulder. I mean, he's got a stump that comes out of the shoulder, but this guy is just completely positive, and he is intent on making a difference and making things happen for other vets who are having a much tougher time than he did. And like I said, he spent 16 months at Walter Reed. So if that gives you an idea of the extent of his injuries, and yet here's a young man who is just completely positive about not only what his life is today, but what he's going to do with it to make things better for other people.
Lars Larson, we always appreciate it. What's coming up on the program this week, sir?
Oh, boy. Well, we just got this decision that the Supreme Court has refused to review the decision on the DACA kids. So apparently they're telling President Trump he's got to continue to enforce and uphold an illegal law that's not even a law. It's the DACA program that President Obama created with a stroke of his pen. Remember his pen and his phone? And he did it illegally and unconstitutionally. There's another case that's challenging it, that's wending its way through the courts. But this one will apparently stand for now because just literally 30 minutes ago, the decision came down. We will, of course, be talking about Florida, and we'll be talking about a lot of the issues that are going on in the Northwest. I'm going to talk to our local sheriff in my area. It's a sheriff in charge of a county of 800,000. And I want to ask him, how confident are you that the men and women that you station in schools as resource officers will actually do what they need to do? He's apparently trying to cast aside that responsibility. And I think if you want something to be done to make your schools safer, you've got to harden that target. You've got to make it, and I've been suggesting this literally for 21 years since the shooting at Thurston High School in Springfield, Oregon, 21 years ago. I've been saying nobody should be in that school except teachers, staff, and students. And if you have business, legitimate business at the school, you should walk up to the school and find a locked door and a camera and a microphone, and you should have to explain what business you have inside that school before you get in. That's number one. Number two, classroom teachers should be authorized to carry concealed if they choose. And remember, if they choose. There are people who are trying to misread this and set up straw men and say, well, what about we're going to assign a gun to a teacher that doesn't even want anything to do with guns? No, not at all. Perish the thought. So there are things, and then every single crime that happens within a school, I mean, if a couple of kids get in a scuffle, I'm not saying they go off to jail, but if you have a kid who assaults a student or a teacher or a staff member and commits a crime, the local school should call the cops and give him a ride in a patrol car. It'll be up to the local prosecutor or DA to decide if he actually faces a criminal charge. But as long as we allow the schools to handle these things administratively, I want every parent listening to this, every school board member listening to this, to say that's what they did with Nick Cruz. Do you want to repeat what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in your community? And before you say it can't happen in your community, I talked several years ago to some emergency responders from Springfield who had handled the Thurston High shooting, and they told me about going to a conference of emergency service providers in Littleton, Colorado, which is where Columbine High School was. And they said the reaction they got to their warning, this could happen in your community, was, you don't understand. Our community is different. It could never happen here. And 4 months later, it did. So lest anybody think Boise is different, don't say that. Because you have some kids in your schools, there have to be at least a few, who are potential ticking time bombs. And the proper way to deal with them is not to turn a school administrator into a police chief or a sheriff or a judge or a jury. They need to let law enforcement handle this. And if they had done that with Nick Cruz, 17 people would still be alive today.
Lars Larson, we will catch you tonight at 6. We so appreciate you, brother.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Thanks very much.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our great friend Lars Larson. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And we love Lars Larson. Coming up, we'll talk about the Dreamers. Apparently, the Dreamers can stay thanks to the Supreme Court. More on that in a minute. And then we'll get to Tom and Richard first, traffic and weather together. And let's get to the phones. Tom, thank you very much for your patience. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Kevin. I don't think I ever had to wait that long. You know what 3 weeks ago Friday was?
I'm sorry, what's that?
It was Groundhog Day, and my 66th birthday. It was partly cloudy, but I did see my shadow briefly, and that meant 6 more weeks of winter. And I guess everybody was laughing, thinking it was over with, but here it is, 3 weeks late, but it's here.
You won't get that in California.
Pardon?
You won't get this type of weather in California.
No, I was just down there. I just came back last Thursday, and I'll tell you, a hard drive isn't just on a computer. It was a hard drive getting home. But anyway, now whether that 6 weeks start on the 2nd of February or starts today, 3 weeks later, I'll wait for 3 more weeks, and then I'll make that prediction, okay?
Roger that.
All right. Say, about this shooting down there in Florida, this guy that was there as an officer to calling for backup, and he was there to basically protect those kids. I just can't understand that. And this was no young rookie. This was a seasoned enough police officer that he's able to bow out of this with a retire and go on a pension rather than face the humiliation of administrative review of why he didn't act. I find that preposterous that this guy was even put there in the first place. If he wasn't how did he make it this far along in the police department that many years? It's a question I'd like to see answered.
Tom, appreciate it.
Pardon?
Said I appreciate that, Tom. Anything else you want to throw out to everybody?
Well, I just don't know. As far as firing the sheriff, if he's an elected official, the only people who can do that would be the elected voters, so they'd have to recall him. Now, President Trump is in favor of raising. And this fellow that the criminal that did this, they said, there's a lot of things fell through the cracks. Well, what I'd like to know is, I'm wondering what would if the American Criminal Liberties Union, better known as the ACLU, if they'd done something to stop this guy, if they would have been crying that his civil rights were being violated. I mean, I don't know, can't seem to win. And the president wants to raise the legal age at which you can purchase one of these high-powered, quick-firing weapons to 21. Well, I don't know, maybe they ought to raise the age to another 50 years to say 71 to buy or possess one of these things, and you must have the your parents' consent to get one, because I don't know really what purpose there is in owning one in the first place. So maybe if it got some amount of circulation, that would help. As far as hiring teachers, I have to think about that one. Maybe if somebody thought somebody was armed in there, they would think twice. I don't know. It seems like these kids that go in there and shoot aren't thinking straight in the first place. And I think this is the first one that hasn't committed suicide, isn't it?
It is. Tom, thank you for the call. Quickly to Richard. Richard, thanks for your patience. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
How you doing, Kevin?
Thanks for waiting, sir.
Oh, it's okay. Have some thoughts on this. I've been reading some on Facebook, teachers that are saying they aren't taught, they aren't hired to be, armed in the schools and that. The thing of it is the process was there and it failed. The same thing with our immigration system. There's a process there and it failed, and that is not being publicized enough. I mean, yeah, the officer didn't go in. Well, who's going to go in? The guy was armed, right?
Exactly.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
So let's put this in real-time situation. In any school in Idaho, if that solution fails and you're the teacher there, to protect yourself and the kids, you want an umbrella? Let's talk about a few other means other than lethal, okay? Let's say you don't want a gun. How about some pepper spray? How about a taser? How about a gun with rubber bullets? It doesn't have to be lethal. If that kid knows that those things are around, when you point something at him, he's going to flinch.
There has to be a deterrent, is what you're saying.
Yes. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want, hey, if I've got somebody aiming a gun at me and my kids, the last thing I want to have to use is an umbrella or a chalkboard eraser or something of that nature. I want something that, pepper spray shoots out 15 feet in a stream. A taser shoots out how far? Yeah, it's not as great as a gun, but if you feel like you don't want to have a gun, you better have something more than a stapler. Right?
Richard, a great point. Thank you. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Not taking any responsibility for the multiple red flags that were brought to the attention of the Broward Sheriff's Office about this shooter before the incident, whether it was people near him, close to him, calling the police on him.
Jake, I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercised my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked... Yes, Jake. There's a lot of things we've done throughout this. You don't measure a person's leadership by a deputy not going into these deputies received the training they needed.
Maybe you measure somebody's leadership by whether or not they protect the community. In this case, you've listed 23 incidents before the shooting involving the shooter, and still nothing was done to keep guns out of his hands, to make sure that the school was protected, to make sure you were keeping an eye on him. Your deputy at the school failed. I don't understand how you can sit there and claim amazing leadership.
There we'll have it. That is the Broward County Sheriff with Jake Tapper. Kevin Miller in the morning. We continue on. Remember, we'd love to get your votes at KIDOTalkRadio.com. Do you support arming guards to guard schools here in Idaho? Let's go to Walt with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Walt.
Oh, good morning. I'm just sitting here listening to all of this stuff, and I've been listening to it for a number of years. And I was just sitting back thinking, I'm sure somebody has mentioned it. They used to get on the school bus with our 22s to take it to high school to go to the rifle range. It had an indoor range. And we didn't shoot up the school. In fact, I don't remember ever having a school shooting. But anyway, The Second Amendment does not give us the right to carry guns. It simply affirms our God-given right to protect ourselves. In the commercial, there was a video on television yesterday that absolutely proves the point. A mother and daughter are in a liquor store. These 2 or 3 guys come in, and they leave, and the cops have got them because these women were able to defend themselves with a gun, a bad old gun. So this whole thing is, to me, is totally out of the question. It's ridiculous that they don't allow me or don't want to allow me to defend myself. What I'm seeing from all of this is we have a bunch of liberals who want to disarm the population and make us totally compliant to their wishes. Obama was one of the worst ones we had about this sort of thing. And Michelle is making noises that she wants to run for president. This is going to be a riot. See how far that lasts. But anyway, the point we got is that these people had a problem. They didn't solve their problem, and now they're trying to blame it on us. And I'm trying to figure out how articulate all these high school students are when they get on television to tell us their arguments about this, that, the other. So anyway, have a good day, folks.
All right, Walt, you have a good day as well. We're joined by a gubernatorial candidate. Harley Brown joins us now. And Harley, you need to, when we're done, put yourself on hold so you can please give Ray Amaya your contact numbers. And we'd love to have you back. It's our old friend Harley Brown with a big announcement today. Good morning.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin. Were you going to allow me to announce my decision to run for governor again?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I couldn't think of a more pleasant venue to tell you guys that. But my lawyer, actually, the young lawyer I hired, Tony, he yesterday convinced me that I should run again for governor. And being a devout masochist, I said, yes, sir. So here I go again you know the old joke, hit me, said the masochist. No, said the sadist. But yeah, I'm going to go down there to the Secretary of State this morning, God willing, and fill out the papers and give him the money, and I'll have my name in the hat.
Harley's back again. Well, we definitely have to have you back on the program.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Yes, I would be delighted to be on your fabulous program.
It'll be like the old times. So are you running as a Republican?
Well, what do you think I'd run as?
Well, that means that you should be. I know there are a lot of debates and forums coming up, and you and Steve Pankey should be invited to all of them, right? You don't want to be excluded from anything, right?
No, I like inclusion, but I'm glad you're flying Dave Ramsey's colors, And as an engineer, we're men of principles. And the same principle that causes a toothpick to float in a shot glass of water floats a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier. It's called Archimedes' principle, and the weight of the fluid displaced equals the upward force.
Yeah, you're losing me, Harley.
Yeah, well, anyway, the principle's the same, tiny to a large scale. Dave Ramsey principles ought to be used on the United States national debt and get ourselves out of debt before our posterity is saddled with that wicked burden. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you for holding your eggs and tomatoes.
Always appreciate the eggs and tomatoes. Hang on, and we'll try and get you on this week, Harley.
Yes, sir.
All right. Harley Brown making it official. He's running for governor once again, and chose to do so right here on our little program on KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Tess, who's joining us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tess.
Good morning. Hey, that's an interesting comment that your sheriff made about what a great employer he is. My daddy taught me one thing, that people hire people most like themselves. So enough said. So I called in regards to, I want to encourage people to go down to these rallies, to these protests, whatever they're having coming up here, And be compassionate with these kids, but stop coddling them, okay? Stop giving them gentle passes. You know, I was very diligent with my daughter, and even though being a parent's like having 2 broken legs, you have to stay because you can't chase them. You have to let them go out and do their own thing there. But, you know, you teach them that some fights need to be picked, but encourage them to get the knowledge, not act emotionally. Because some of the rallies I have been down to, they're being led by people that they should not be listening to. I can almost guarantee you that this young man who just made a comment about limitations of the First Amendment, that he has no idea what they are. And they're pretty basic and they're pretty limited. And it has to do with fighting words. And I'll tell you, if they actually enforce that type of stuff, every comedian would be in jail. So I want to ask people, go down there and compassionately talk with these young people. And the reason for that is they're the ones that are going to be running the country here in about 15 years. So stop giving them trophies for coming in last place. Okay, so now I've said my piece.
Well, you say your piece anytime here at KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Tess.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We're joined by the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob, on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you today?
I am, look, we got a big scoop. Harley Brown is back. That's one of our most downloaded videos ever on KIDOTalkRadio.com is Harley.
I can't wait for the debate. It should be great.
And
this
I
time
think
we get to see.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
This way we get to see Lieutenant Governor Little in action.
Well, and I do believe that Steve Pankey and Harley and the congressman, the doctor, and lieutenant governor all should be up on stage. The more the merrier, and I hope that everyone honors these forums and debates to have all the candidates on, don't you?
Oh, listen, I'm up for a circus anytime you can put one together.
And I hope, public television and everybody else doesn't exclude these people because their constituents are important.
Well, you know they're going to do that anyway, so we'll just have to wait and see, Kevin. But it's nice of you to have Harley on. I think that was great.
Well,
you know, I have a couple of interesting facts that are going to be coming out in one of our articles by Chris Pennico about gun laws and Idaho politics. And Chris has done some research on this. And under Idaho Code 183304C, it says the gun policy for primary, middle, junior high, and high school is the responsibility of the local school boards. You know, I think most of us remember the battle we had when we fought to get our college students the ability to carry guns on campus. And even once the fight was won, the professors who didn't want them were asking students if they had carry permits in their classrooms, basically outing whoever had a carry permit and had a loaded firearm. Most of these, of course, are liberal professors would love to confiscate all our guns. You know, even Governor Otter was against allowing the guns on campus. And the only reason he signed the bill was he had a primary challenge with Russ Fulcher. Guns on campus, the students can have the guns, but they can't have them in their dorms. So what good does that do if a gunman comes into the dorm and you don't have a gun to protect yourself anyway? You know, I'm hoping the school boards in this state are smart enough to see the light that only if there is a real threat of resistance at the schools to a would-be shooter will we ever resolve the problem of mass shootings, because I think everyone realizes that gun-free zones are absolutely worthless. And I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years now. Most shooters want to go to a place of least resistance. So let's not give them a target by allowing our teachers and school officials to be at the mercy of these shooters and allow them to carry firearms with proper training. You know, if we have no deterrent at the schools, we're going to have more of these shootings, and certainly nobody wants more of that. Thank you again for my time. I appreciate it.
God bless you, my friend.
Have a great day.
Our great friend, Tea Party Bob. More of your calls next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Jake, on 16 of those cases, our deputies did everything right. Our deputies have done amazing things. We've taken this, in the 5 years I've been sheriff, we've taken the Broward Sheriff's Office to a new level. I work with some of the bravest people I've ever met. One person, at this point, one person didn't do what he should have done. It's horrific. The victims here, the families, I pray for them every night. It makes me sick to my stomach that we had a deputy that didn't go in, because I know if I was there, if I was on that wall, I would have been the first in.
I think there are a lot of people, sir, who think that there are a lot of mistakes other than that one deputy. Do you think that if the Broward Sheriff's Office had done things differently, this shooting might not have happened?
Listen, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books.
I don't know what that means. There's 17 dead people, and there's a whole long list of things your department could have done differently.
How could I? Listen, that's what after action reports are. That's what lessons learned reports are for. I have entered into conversation with Chuck Wexler of the Police Executive Research Forum. They will be coming to town to do an independent after action lessons learned report. We understand everything wasn't done perfectly, and if it happened in Los Angeles or Chicago or any other city, every person wouldn't perform perfectly. That's not what happens.
There we have it. He's a victim, Sheriff Scott Israel, from our friends Jake Tapper and his crew. Kevin Miller in the morning here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Big news at the top of the hour. Fox will have much more on this. The Supreme Court has decided to allow the Dreamers to stay, which is odd because being here in DACA and all that is unconstitutional to begin with. So how can they make that happen? I guess it's make it up as you go. But first, Pro-Life joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Yeah, it was nice to hear that Harley's going to run again.
Harley's going to run as a Republican. Right,
and just a couple of days ago, Walt Bays' daughter called me, and he's in the hospital with a stroke. And
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that Walt. Yeah. Walt is hopefully he'll recover from his stroke, and you're a veteran of these things. Don't you believe that Harley and if Walt makes it back and Steve Pankey should all be in these forums and debates, right?
Oh, definitely. But the big stations, they say you have to have. Now, I see on Steve Pankey's reports to the state that he's raised $90,000 of his own money and he spent $80,000. Now that says to me that he needs to be in any debate.
Well, I don't know. That's a lot of money that Steve Pankey has raised and spent already, even though the campaign hasn't started.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand it, but that's just what the report says.
I saw him the other day, by the way. Steve Pankey was in. He's very serious.
Well, hey, whether a person's totally serious or not, they need to be in the debate. If a person's going to go down there and file, they need to have all of them on the stage and give them equal time. And,
well, that's what it's about. It's not about promoting an individual station. It's about public service, right?
Right. Public service says that you expose the truth wherever it's coming from, people that are trying to get on the ballot. And that's what caused this suppression of truth in the United States. If you're not in one of the two major parties, then you can't run. In Texas, Oklahoma, certain states, you can't even get on the ballot unless you're a Democrat or Republican. They don't have Constitution Party. They don't have independents. They don't have anything. I mean, it's pretty terrible. But anyway, Steve Israel, the sheriff down there, he's totally out of it. He's not admitting to his neglect in this situation, and the FBI did. And, in fact, I'll even go out on a limb so far to say that maybe the FBI, the way down in the parts of the FBI, they have some kind of a directive that they're going to let some of these things play out. And
now.
That's a possibility.
When you say that, you destroy your credibility, brother.
Well, I'll tell you something. I know that in 9/11.
I know. You and I agree to disagree on that one, too.
9/11, our people knew that those guys were going to try to fly planes. But anyway,
You know what happens when you start going 9/11 on me?
Oh, yeah. I know.
You know what happens? I start going, right. And you know what that means.
Well, anyway, here's what I think. I'm going to call...
We've already heard what you thought.
Well, I'm going to call the...
Again and again.
The airlines. I'm going to call the businesses that are boycotting NRA, and I'm going to tell them I'm not going to do business with them unless I have to.
Well, how many times a year do you get on a plane anyway, though?
I don't. I don't have enough money to fly.
You and me both, brother. Thank you. Traffic and weather together. Sean Hannity will be talking about this, as well as our old friend Glenn Beck. Breaking news this morning.
The High Court denied a government request to immediately decide whether the Trump administration can end the program protecting illegal immigrants brought to America as children. The issue now goes back to a federal appeals court. A federal judge ruled last month that the administration could not end the program on March 5th, a decision President Trump announced 6 months ago. He wanted Congress to find a fix for the so-called Dreamers, but lawmakers have rejected several immigration proposals. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
So much for the co-equal branches of government. Oh, it's all good here. Ray and I, great job as always. And to you, good day, God bless, and keep the faith.